when I was reborn. This time I avoided every encounter with Tom. He said he wasn't going home for the holiday, so I packed my bags and went back to the village alone. He helped Lily rent a house next door, so I moved out. He decided to stay on at the university, so I enrolled at an industrial university in the Northwest. In my previous life, when I was old, even our children advised me to divorce him, also that in 100 years, they, the ill-fated couple, could be buried together. Chapter 1. Holding the admission letter in my hands, I, a girl who had come from the countryside, almost shed a tear. No one knew that I had been reborn. At the last moment, I changed my university choice to the Industrial University in the Northwest. Even the teacher was puzzled. Didn't you say your fiancé is staying at the university? If you go to such a faraway place to study, can he wait for you? When I mentioned Tom, his tall, handsome figure from his younger days came to mind. Actually, everyone thought I was trying to climb up the social ladder by being with Tom. He was ambitious, good-looking, and now a non-commissioned officer at a military academy, while I was just a girl who had been betrothed to him since childhood because of a village custom, which gave me the right to stand by his side. I smiled and replied loudly, "Teacher, now it's all about free love. My betrothal with him was just a remnant of feudal society, and it's no good." Perhaps he hadn't expected me to have such awareness. The teacher patted me on the shoulder, his eyes full of admiration. Leaving the school, I walked home, blending in with the crowd. Chapter 2. In my previous life, I didn't even go to college, because soon after, Tom and I were getting married, and then I quickly became pregnant. I never finished my studies. Not long after Tom stayed at the university, he went to the army. From then on, we were separated by distance. In the outside world, he kept rising in his career, and wherever he went, Lily from the cultural troupe would bring her daughter to follow him. As for me, I was confined to a small world, serving the elderly and taking care of the children. I watched my children go from their first words, always clinging to me, to growing up and slowly distancing themselves, step by step, going towards Tom. Later, I even found out about his marriage to Lily's daughter only after the wedding was done. I saw it from an old friend. In the photo, when Tom and his wife were offering tea, the way Tom and Lily smiled at each other, it was filled with affection. Later on, my son even once advised me to divorce him. He said, "Mom, Dad suffered his whole life. If it weren't for you, he would have been with my mother-in-law by now. Mom, no matter how you look at it, you two are not a match. Why can't you just let go?" Even my daughter-in-law was unwilling to see me, but what could I do? I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept that when my in-laws were bedridden, I had to serve them day and night while he was out enjoying himself. I couldn't accept that when my son got sick and had a fever in the middle of the night, I ran 5 kilometers barefoot to find a doctor, while he was with someone else's woman, teaching their daughter how to do homework. I couldn't accept that I gave up everything for this family. And in the end, he said, they said, everyone said, I wasn't a match for him. Everyone blamed me for not letting go, but I just couldn't. The hardship of my youth left me with deep lines on my face. My body aging quickly. Even if I die, I will drag them down with me. As for whether they are together after my death, I no longer care. I don't even have the strength to care anymore. Finally, I died after my son once again urged me to divorce him. He spoke for a long time, and when he saw I remained silent, he angrily left. What he didn't know was, just as he was about to slam the door, my heart condition flared up. I called for him, but he slammed the door without looking back. In that moment, I deeply regretted. Why did I leave him? Why did I waste my whole life for him? But thankfully, I was reborn. Back before I married Tom. Everything is still in time. Chapter 3. When I got home, I hid the admission letter and started cooking. This house was a 2-bedroom apartment provided by Tom's workplace. While I was cooking, I found next month's university registration date on the calendar in the living room. I circled it with a red pen. I gazed at the circled number with longing. It would be soon. Very soon. Soon. I would be free. Chapter 4. The food was just ready when Tom came home. As expected, Lily was trailing behind him with the child. Sister-in-law, sorry to bother you again. Lily had fair skin, an oval face, and when she wore a bright red coat, it added an indescribable charm. The girl was used to it and, seeing that I had finished cooking, cheered and quickly went to serve the rice. She got a bowl, Tom got a bowl, and Lily got a bowl, but there was none for me. By the time I came out of the kitchen, the three of them were happily chatting at the table, as if they were a family. However, as soon as the food hit their mouths, all three of them simultaneously spat it out. Mom, it's too salty. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe, watching Tom hurriedly serve soup for the mother and daughter, but the soup was even saltier. In the end, Lily left in tears. Before she left, she told Tom, maybe sister-in-law doesn't want me here. I won't come over anymore. Tom saw her out and came back with a frown. I ignored him and went straight to the kitchen to stir-fry the vegetables again. You did that on purpose? Tom seemed a little confused. He then started to explain. Before her husband passed, he asked me to take care of her and her daughter. Your cooking is really good, and the child likes it. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Tom shook his head, seeming to give in. Since you don't like it, I won't invite them over for meals in the future. Chapter 5. The next day, after Tom left, I took out my bundle and prepared to go back to the village for a visit in a couple of days. Although Tom and I were betrothed as children, our families had exchanged tokens and birth dates. If we really wanted to break up, it would require the presence of the village leader to avoid any confusion later on. While packing, I came across the quilts and pillowcases I had secretly embroidered over the past few years. I thought for a moment, then took a bag and packed them along with the new shoes I had made. I headed to the pawn shop at the end of the street. I sold the things I had embroidered over the years for 30 yuan, though it wasn't much. With all the expenses for food and drink at university, this money would be enough to save. Back home, I marked another big X on today's date on the calendar. Only 20 more days. In 20 days, I would be able to leave this place and start my new life. Chapter 6. Tom didn't return until late. The food I had made was untouched. I already ate at school, he casually explained, but when I smelled the white tea-like fragrance of his cologne, I knew that while he had eaten, it was probably with Lily and her daughter. He must have known that I'd find it uncomfortable to eat with him, so he ate with them outside before coming home. I silently cleaned up the dishes and went to my room. The room was filled with my high school textbooks and test papers, and since the room was too small, many of them were piled up in the living room. I started tying up the books in the room with a string, planning to tidy the living room the next time Tom left the house. Since I was leaving, it didn't make sense to leave anything behind. As I was cleaning up, I heard a knock on the door. I knew it was Tom. He had always been very polite to me and would never step into my room without my permission. What is it? I didn't want him to see that I was packing, so I asked. There was silence on the other side for a moment. Then he said, I'm writing the marriage report. Can we set the wedding date for the 9th of next month? The 9th of next month was the day Tom and I had married in my previous life. I glanced at the packed bundle and replied lightly, marriage is a big deal. I'll go back tomorrow and ask for their opinion. There was silence outside for a long while, and finally, I heard his footsteps walking away. I breathed a sigh of relief and leaned back against the headboard. The truth was, with his current status, he didn't need to consult his family to file a marriage report. Since my parents had passed when I was young, his family had taken me in because of the betrothal. So, in everyone's eyes, I had long been part of the Jiang family. The marriage report was just a formality. Moreover, he was handsome, successful, and treated me well. Anyone could tell that my heart had already fallen for him. I truly owed the Jiang family. But no matter what, I had already repaid that debt in my previous life. This time, I owed them nothing. In this life, I was going to walk my own path. A path that didn't include Tom. Chapter 7. The next morning, to my surprise, Tom had already made breakfast. It was my favorite fried egg and 8 treasure porridge. This was something I had rarely seen him do in the 3 years I had been here for school. I silently sat down. At the table, the only sound was the occasional clink of the spoon against the bowl. I'll take a leave and go back with you. Tom suddenly looked up and said. I was startled and instinctively shook my head. I'll drive you back. It's not safe for you to go alone. He frowned and glanced at me. I was about to make up an excuse to refuse, but then I saw a little girl run in through the door. Godpa! The little girl had 2 pink butterfly bows on her head and, as soon as she entered, she rushed straight into Tom's arms. Emma, why are you here? Where's your mom? Tom instinctively looked outside. Emma carefully looked up at me from his arms. Mom said Auntie doesn't like her, so she didn't dare come. I quietly looked at this girl, who in my previous life had never appeared before me after marrying my son. Though she was only 3, she already looked like a beautiful girl. Despite being 4 years older than my son, he still treated her mother and daughter like royalty. Tom naturally hurried off with Emma because she said Lily wasn't feeling well. Tom didn't leave a word, just rushed off with the child. I sneered. Well, at least I didn't need to worry about how to find an excuse to leave on my own. I took out my pen, went back to the calendar, and put a big cross over today's date. Only 19 more days. I quickly gathered up all the books in the room, then took all my notebooks, books, and test papers in the living room and tied them together. After I sold everything, I had 13 yuan in hand, and I set off on my way back to the village. I was going back today to cancel my marriage with Tom, though my in-laws had always treated me kindly. Convincing them to break off the engagement wouldn't be that hard. All I had to do was tell them that Tom was about to soar to new heights. And as for me and him, we weren't suited anymore. Chapter 08. The yard in the countryside was quiet and dull. A small bonfire burned in the yard, with mosquitoes buzzing around it. I sat under the mud wall, pressing tobacco leaves with a wooden board and cutting them into thin strips with a machete. My uncle and aunt sat silently on the doorstep. After a long while, they sighed deeply, and with a kind, but stern tone, my aunt said, Amy, even if he has someone else in his heart, you and he have a marriage contract. If he dares not marry you, I will make him regret it. Your parents are gone, and before they left, they asked us to take care of you. This, sigh. Seeing that I remained silent, they exchanged glances before helplessly saying, Why are you so stubborn? Come on, let's go to the commune. I silently followed them. The commune issued the certificate, and the engagement tokens were returned in front of several elders who had witnessed the betrothal. I sighed softly as I supported my uncle and aunt back home. I knew they meant well for me. Logically, Tom was highly regarded by everyone now, and even his own parents couldn't understand why I insisted on breaking off the engagement. But I couldn't explain. I couldn't tell them that in my previous life, I had suffered enough, and that their only son had been born to Lily and given to them as their family, while I had remained a solitary figure my entire life. Chapter 09. The engagement was successfully dissolved. My uncle and aunt said, From now on, you are our daughter. I didn't mention that I would be going to the Northwest for school, but I still stayed with them for half a month. When I left, they sent me all the way to the village entrance. They kept talking, telling me to treat their house as my home and to come back to visit. When I reached the town and bought my ticket, I found that they had secretly slipped 200 yuan into my bag. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I couldn't hold them back. Chapter 10. Back at the house, I immediately marked 15 big red crosses on the calendar. Only 4 days left. Just 4 more days. Chapter 11. I was about to go to my room with my luggage when I heard the door open. Tom had just returned from work, but to my surprise, Lily and Emma were with him. You're back? Tom seemed surprised when he saw me. Lily gave me a restrained nod and naturally headed towards my room. I frowned as I saw her casually close the door behind her, and my belongings, casually piled up in the living room. I looked at Tom. He paused for a moment before seemingly remembering something. Well, Lily's house was leaking from the heavy rain a couple of days ago. She's staying here for a few days. I saw you weren't around, and since there wasn't much of her stuff, I thought I'd let her use your room. So just like that, without asking for my permission, he moved my things out and let someone else stay in my room? He hesitated again and added, By the way, I moved your stuff to my room. For now, you can stay with me. As he spoke, he opened the door to his room. By the way, where are your books? Why are there so few things? I looked at the small bundle of belongings he had placed on the bedside table and pursed my lips. Well, this was his house. After all, whatever he did was none of my business. After the college entrance exam, there's no use for the books anymore, so I sold them. I explained softly. Tom frowned. Even though the exams are over, you might still need them later. Why sell them? I pursed my lips and said nothing. Seeing that I remained silent, he finally asked, "So, what did your parents say?" I paused for a moment. I asked someone to check the date, and it's not good. We'll talk about it later. This was the excuse I had discussed with my uncle and aunt. We would delay the wedding by using this excuse. And when I left, I would make everything clear to Tom. Tom seemed to have no suspicions and just nodded, muttering, "Looks like we'll have to check the date again." Then he walked away. He said he would make dinner and asked me to rest for a while since I had just returned. I glanced at the desk by the window. The marriage registration form he had filled out was there, with only the date left blank. When I came to my senses, I intended to go help in the kitchen, but I heard the faint voices of 3 people outside. A man's low voice, a woman's flirtatious tone, and a child's adorable chatter. I silently sat back down. At this point, I had already broken off the engagement with Tom. It was inappropriate for us to continue living together, especially in the same room. But with only 4 days left, I couldn't find a suitable place to rent. I thought for a moment and decided that after dinner, I would sleep on the floor in the living room. Chapter 12. I spent the whole day on a bus and had planned to go to bed early. But Lily was full of energy and, dressed in a white dress, was practicing dance in the living room, even using a mat to stretch her legs. Meanwhile, Emma kept running in and out of Tom's room, even using his bed as a trampoline. I had no choice but to make an excuse to go outside and get some water. When I stepped outside, I took a deep breath. "Hey, Amy, why are you back? Didn't you say you were going to visit your in-laws?" Mrs. Flower from the neighboring house asked, coming out with a basin and walking with me to the well. "I came back for a few days. Just got in today," I replied. Mrs. Flower was my neighbor, and her husband worked as an accountant at the mine. They lived fairly well, and we got along well. Whenever she made fried dough balls or other treats, she would bring me some. I was wondering. Mrs. Flower seemed about to say something when she glanced behind me, then pulled me forward a few steps. When we reached the well, she gave my forehead a disapproving tap. "What are you doing? How could you be so naive? Why are you letting such a man into your house? You've got to be careful, bringing all sorts of people into your home, good or bad." She cleft her tongue and said, "Tom is a catch. Even flies would want to bite him. And you let him bring someone like that into your house? Are you out of your mind?" After listening to Mrs. Flower's long-winded advice, I finally understood why Tom had brought Lily and Emma back. He had claimed that it was my idea. He said I saw how pitiful Lily was, a single mother who had suffered a disaster, and I asked him to bring her back to stay before we went back to our hometown. I sneered. Tom was clearly using me as a shield to avoid the gossip outside. But since I was leaving soon, I didn't want to argue about these things with him. I smiled and said nothing. When we returned, Mrs. Flower repeatedly reminded me to kick out such a troublemaker as soon as possible. She was worried that I might be too soft-hearted, and insisted that if I needed help, I should let her know. I knew she was partly enjoying the drama, but she meant well. When I got back to the house, the living room was empty. I grabbed some clothes to go to the bathroom, only to find that there were suddenly many feminine items that didn't belong to me. My familiar soap and towels had been moved to the corner by the wash basin, next to the trash can. In their place, 2 towels, one large and one small, were neatly placed along with a shampoo and a hairband. "Hey, Amy, Emma needs to use the toilet. Could you step aside?" A deliberate shoulder bump from Lily made me hit my head on the doorframe. She was holding Emma, who had just finished using the toilet, and when she saw me still standing at the door, she said in a soft voice, "Could you move? You're blocking the way." Though her voice was gentle, the smug and contemptuous look in her eyes was unmistakable. But unfortunately, I didn't move. "Apologize," I said coldly. Lily was taken aback. clearly not expecting me to act so indifferent. But she had a good daughter. Emma didn't like me, and when she saw the atmosphere was off between her mother and me, she suddenly rushed forward and shoved me with all her strength, crying loudly, "You're bad! You're bad! You're bullying my mommy!" Tom heard Emma crying and rushed out of his room. "What happened? What's going on?" Tom quickly took the child in his arms, while Lily's eyes reddened. "It's my fault." Emma was in a hurry to go to the bathroom since Amy was in the way. I asked her to move, but Tom disapproved of me and glanced at me, though he didn't say anything in front of Lily. He comforted Emma. "Don't cry. Don't cry. I'll talk to Auntie and ask her to apologize to you, okay?" He carried Emma back into his room, where he promised to give her some candy to calm her down. Lily shot me a half smile as she followed Tom inside. As I listened to Emma's loud cries slowly fade away, I finished my shower expressionlessly, gathering my belongings into the wash basin. When I went back to my room, Lily and Emma were already gone. On the bedside table, a box of brightly colored candies was left behind, clearly meant for the child. Chapter 13. When Tom saw me come in, he froze while packing up his things. "Sit down." I could tell from his expression that he wanted to have a serious talk with me, explaining what it means to care for a child, not to argue with a kid, and maybe ask for an apology or something along those lines. I complied and sat down, took out a piece of tissue, and dabbed the wound on my head, then handed it to him. The red stain on the tissue was quite noticeable. Tom's words caught in his throat, his face turning pale, clearly uncomfortable. "I'll sleep in the living room tonight." I grabbed a blanket and headed for the door. "Wait." Tom grabbed me by the arm. "Why go out? You can sleep in the room." He thought I was angry about the incident earlier, and sighed as he pulled me back in. "Emma's still a child, and Lily didn't mean to. You're the adult here. Don't argue with a child. She's a guest here. I know you don't like Lily, but she's not having an easy time. Don't be so petty, all right?" I sneered. "So, you brought her back and said it was my idea?" Tom froze, opening his mouth to speak but no words came out. I smiled. No matter how grandiose the excuses, the inner restlessness and filthy thoughts were impossible to hide. Out of respect for our elders, I didn't want to ruin his career, but this was all I could do. That night, Tom made a bed on the floor in the living room. Chapter 14. The next day, I woke up early, packed my things, and planned to find a good hotel before coming back for my luggage. As I opened the door, I saw that Tom had already prepared breakfast. As soon as Emma saw me, she snorted and moved the food toward herself and Lily. Tom, holding a fried egg, smiled at me. "You're up. Come on." I made fried eggs. He turned around and saw the food in front of Emma and Lily, giving an awkward smile. "Good girl, Emma. Can you share some with Auntie?" I didn't respond to them. I just walked straight out of the room. The only hotel nearby was just down the street. I booked the cheapest room, 21 yuan for 3 days. After paying the rent and deposit, I stopped by a breakfast shop to get some buns and fried dough sticks. When I returned, I found that my packed bundle had been opened, and everything was tossed around. My admission notice had been taken out by Emma, who was now playing with it, making paper airplanes. My mind went blank. "What are you doing?" I grabbed the admission notice back, and Emma was startled, falling off the table. Her loud cries attracted Lily from the other room. "What's going on? Who told you to bully Emma?" Lily pushed me hard and rushed to pick up the child. I trembled with rage, carefully opening the admission letter. "Bully her? You should be looking at what she did. Who told you to touch my things? Get out!" Lily stood up, holding the child, and gave me a cold look. "Ha, you're not even married to Jiang yet. You don't get to make the rules here." She walked toward the door, paused, then turned around. "Even if you do marry him, you'll never beat me." The door slammed shut. Lily's hostility always came out when Tom wasn't around. Chapter 15. I used to feel inferior, timid. She was beautiful, had a good job, and was the star of the arts troupe. I always thought there was no way I could compare to her. But after reliving this life, I finally let go. Why should I compare myself to her? In Tom's heart, of course, Lily was more important. But besides Tom, is there nothing else left in my life? I can still go to college. I can contribute to the country's development. I can go out, broaden my horizons, and gain knowledge. The muck here will only hold me back. I packed up my things and made another big red X on the calendar. With my bag on my back, I headed to the hotel I had booked. When I first came back to life, I did consider going to Lily's workplace to make a scene. She ruined my previous life, and I thought I couldn't let it go. But what good would that do? As long as Tom is around, even if Lily loses her job, he can still support her. It won't actually affect her much. As long as I still feel grateful for what the elders have done for me. As long as I don't want to completely destroy Tom, Lily will always be in a strong position. Anyway, this was all Tom's fault for not keeping his intentions pure. Why don't any of Lily's husband's war buddies ever help her out like this? Why doesn't anyone step in to be Emma's godfather? So, well, Chapter 16. At the hotel, I quickly packed up my things and took out some stationery to write Tom a letter. Putting aside his neglect after marriage, his lifelong entanglement with Lily, I wanted to talk about the 3 years I spent here in high school. He took care of my food and expenses, sometimes even helping me with my homework. For all that, I should clear up my relationship with him. In the letter, I wrote about breaking off the engagement and said that I had been accepted to another university. From now on, we would part ways, and I would never see him again. As I was halfway through the letter, I heard a knock on the door. I thought it was the hotel staff, but when I opened the door, I saw Tom standing there. He looked exhausted, as if he had been running around looking for me. When he saw me, he let out a huge sigh of relief. Finally found you. I'm glad you're okay. You're okay, right? I remained silent, thinking he was about to scold me. All right. Stop being angry. Come back with me. Tom pushed past me and started to help me pack. I quickly covered the unfinished letter, but his gaze landed on a silver bracelet on top of my bundle. His face changed, and he picked it up. Why is this bracelet with you? I froze, annoyed at myself for not hiding it properly. This afternoon, Emma rummaged through my things. A bell fell out, and I fixed it. This bracelet was a token of our engagement when we were kids. I had taken it back the last time I came. Tom's expression grew strange. I thought this bracelet was supposed to be at my mom's place. I was still trying to figure out what to say when he suddenly smiled. I get it now. Your mom must have asked you to bring it over to me, right? He put the bracelet back in the bundle. Keep it here for now. We'll be getting married soon anyway. What's mine is yours. Keep it all together. I breathed a sigh of relief, but I still kept my hand over the bundle. Tom frowned. What? Are you still mad? Emma was wrong, but she's just a child. Don't make a scene. Do you know how worried Lily was when you ran off? She went looking for you all night. She even hurt her knee and is still lying at home. I don't get it. Emma's always been good. Every time you're around, you always clash with her. Tom kept going, but when he saw me staring at him coldly, he stopped talking. I suddenly laughed. Do you know what happened this afternoon? Your daughter rummaged through my things, and I told her to get lost. But your Lily said I had no right to make her leave. She even said that even if I married you, I'd never win over her. I watched Tom's face slowly change. What do you mean, my daughter? She's a goddaughter. I ignored him and continued. You always pretend to be helping your late brother's wife. But if your brother knew how you were taking care of his wife, do you think he would rest in peace? My sarcastic smile and the sharp truth pierced Tom's self-deception. His face went pale, and he seemed to stagger a bit. After a long while, he finally said with difficulty, if you're not going back, you can stay here and reflect. I'll come pick you up in a few days. Tom turned and fled in a panic. I never thought I'd fail you. I'll go back and get the marriage certificate right away. Hearing his hurried footsteps fade, I closed the door expressionlessly. It was laughable, as if in his eyes, him agreeing to get the marriage certificate and marrying me was such a huge favor. I should be eternally grateful. Chapter 17. The next day, I went to my teacher's office to pick up my train ticket. The teacher had worried that I wouldn't get a seat and had helped me buy a ticket early. She had also arranged for some people she knew in the Northwest to look after me a little. I had lunch with her. Then, in the afternoon, I bought some local specialties to bring to my future university roommates. That night, I went to bed early. I thought I would lie awake, feeling reluctant and overthinking everything. To my surprise, once I lay down, I fell asleep quickly. The next morning, I left the letter at the hotel reception, checked out, and dragged my luggage to the train station. Chapter 18. After 2 days on the train, jostling and bumping, I could only doze off here and there. When I finally arrived at the school, I sighed in relief. I completed the enrollment procedures and then began the intense academic schedule. In my previous life, I never had the chance to step into a university. This time, I cherished the opportunity. Aside from eating and sleeping, I was either in class or the library. 3 months into the semester, I received Tom's first letter. I wasn't surprised he had found out where I was. A month ago, my teacher had already told me that Tom had visited and found out I had come to the Northwest. So when I received his letter, I wasn't surprised at all. In his letter, he said he didn't agree with the breakup. He said, in his heart, I had always been his wife. He also said that there was nothing between him and Lily, and he had already sent her away. They would never meet again. He said he was waiting for me to come back. Along with the letter was 100 yuan. I put the letter away without replying. And of course, I didn't touch the money. Chapter 20. The academic workload in university was heavy, and I originally thought about finding a part-time job. Although I ranked among the top students and received a scholarship, my living expenses still put a strain on me, and I found it hard to breathe under the pressure. When my teacher found out about my plan, she scolded me and began sending me 50 yuan each month. In her letter, she specifically mentioned that this money was a loan. At the end of the letter, she even added a playful comment, "Don't worry, your teacher knows all about it, and she supports me." For some reason, tears suddenly welled up in my eyes. In my previous life, no matter how hard things got, I had screamed, hated, and regretted, but I had never cried. This life, too, had been the same. But in this moment, my tears broke through like a dam bursting, and I cried out all the sorrow I had been holding inside. Even my roommates were startled and came to comfort me. After crying, I began working even harder. Chapter 21. Tom's letters came once a month, along with 100 yuan each time. In the last month of this semester, he said he knew I wouldn't want to come back, but he asked me to wait for him. He would come to spend the new year with me. Chapter 22. But Tom didn't come. The letters stopped arriving as well. Later, I learned from my teacher that Tom had married Lily. In the letter, my teacher wrote, "This matter became a bit of a scandal. I heard he had applied for a transfer to your area, but someone reported him, accusing him of having improper relationships. Since you had already left, there was no victim to speak out, so the matter was swept under the rug. That woman lost her job because of it. In the end, he had no choice but to marry her." At the end, my teacher added, "I feel incredibly relieved for you. You are lucky." Chapter 23. I knew that this life had been a lucky one. Lucky to have been reborn before I had to make the university application. Lucky to have avoided the pitfall that my past life had been. Chapter 24. I received another letter from Tom a year later. The first thing he said was sorry. Then he explained that the person who had reported him was actually Lily herself. She had known that Tom had applied for the transfer. Lily had begged him to stay, but he refused. So Lily resorted to extreme measures. She won. She married Tom. Tom wrote that only later did he realize what the dates I had marked on the calendar in the living room meant. He had always thought that those were the days I was hoping to marry him. I smiled to myself and burned all the letters. As for the money Tom had sent, I returned it all to my teacher, asking her to forward it on my behalf. Chapter 25. 2 years later, still not graduated, I joined the country's 201 project. Chapter 26. I dedicated the rest of my life to the country, never questioning my return. Chapter 27. Tom's side story. After hearing Amy's words at the hotel, I was absolutely furious. I locked myself in my house for 3 days. I knew I had made a mistake. The mistake was that while waiting for Amy to grow up, my heart had strayed. Each time I helped Lily, I began to drift away. Lily's understanding and Emma's bright, cheerful personality made me forget that I had a fiancé and led me to make actions that even I was ashamed of. I spent 3 days thinking and realized I couldn't live without Amy. I found the hotel, but it was too late. She had already left. She left me. I asked everyone, but no one knew where she had gone. Finally, I found out from her teacher that she had gone to the Northwest. My world collapsed. I remembered the silver bracelet that shouldn't have been in her bag. I rushed home immediately, but when I got there, they told me she had already broken off the engagement. I returned to the apartment we had shared for 3 years, lost and disoriented. That night, I drank heavily. Lily snuck in. She saw my transfer request and caused a scene. She lost her job. Her family came to make trouble, and I had no choice but to marry her. But soon, even my friends began distancing themselves from me. I wrote Amy letters, but she never replied. It was as if, once she left, she had disappeared from my world. After marrying Lily, she kept a tight grip on me, always causing trouble. My parents didn't like her, always comparing her to Amy. Lily slowly changed, becoming hysterical. Later, there were several opportunities for me to transfer, but each time Lily made a scene, accusing me of wanting to leave her, and each time, I could only laugh bitterly inside. I wondered if Amy would find me disgusting now, seeing me bound to Lily. Afterwards, I watched as my friends rose in their careers while I stayed stagnant. Gradually, Lily began to say I was useless. She wanted another child, but couldn't get pregnant. In the end, we only had Emma. Later, when Emma grew up and got married, she ended up in a terrible situation. Her husband abused her, cheated on her, and was a gambler. Lily cried every day over her daughter's situation, but when Emma wanted a divorce, Lily wouldn't let her go. Every time they fought, Lily would lash out at me, saying I was useless and asking why I married her in the first place. Emma blamed me too, saying it was all my fault because I didn't have a high enough position to back her up. I couldn't argue. Later, Emma couldn't escape her marriage, and when she ran away, she was caught and beaten badly. As I got older, I couldn't do much to help her. Then, Emma killed herself, leaving behind a 6-year-old child. I never expected that. In my old age, after losing my daughter, I would have to raise her child. Looking at Emma's child, I thought back to that year. There had been another young figure beside me, one who had looked at me with nothing but love. I often found myself wondering if I hadn't gotten involved with Lily. If I had married Amy, would the outcome have been different? But when did I lose her? I couldn't remember anymore. Looking back on my life, it was utterly meaningless.